It's been a busy 2025 for Drake. He dropped his Party Next Door collaboration album. Fans from Toronto have been waiting for that collaboration for years. We finally got it in 2025. He went on the Anita Max Win tour, a massive tour for him. Did great as far as reception and sales go. Not only that, he's been doing a lot of live streams, and he's been talking about this new solo studio album. But with that being said, there's a massive theory that's been flying around the community, and that's that we have a new era for Drake, and apparently it's called Iceman. So with that being said, Lou and I are going to be going through the entire timeline and all the theories of this new Iceman album, and if you guys want to stay up to date with everything Drizzy Drake related for this new era, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. But Lou, let's get into this. This is interesting because there's been development now for almost a year at this point, dating back all the way to 100 gigs. So let's get into this theory.
And there's definitely a lot of weight behind this theory, but it could also maybe just be a stretch and a reach. We'll have to see what ends up happening. But that being said, some of you guys might know this information from the short form piece that I did, but I'm going to recap it for you guys. So this has been going on for over a year, like you said, at this point, and it's the theory that this album will be called Iceman. And what's interesting is that Iceman refers to the Marvel comic book character whose real name in the comics is Robert Louis Drake. So already there's a connection, right? You move on to Drake's attire. Drake very recently, on the stream that he just did with Aiden Ross, was wearing a hoodie that had Iceman written on it. Not only that, but he's also worn stuff like the custom Iceman branded race pants by Grupo Vava on stage, dating as far back as March 2024, and it was sort of like designed in the same style as the hoodie. So that was very interesting to see that it's been a year now that he's really pushing this Iceman branding for whatever reason. But it obviously goes deeper than that. When Drake teased the second drop of 100 gigs on his Finsta plot twist, the project was titled 100 Gigs 2.0 Iceman. And it goes further than that, because on the plot twist account, Drake was posting photos of Formula One racer Kimi Räikkönen to that IG, and this racer's nickname is the Iceman. He also was posting actor Val Kilmer, whose character's nickname in the film Top Gun was the Iceman. So a lot of connections there. Another sort of hint, if you will, On Thin Ice, who's a credible platform on Twitter, who usually gets like the scoops on shit earlier than other platforms or whatever the case may be, on April 14th, they randomly, with no context, posted a photo of the Iceman character, and people think that that might be them hinting that Drake's new album will be the Iceman or that it's coming soon. And there's also been theories about like, okay, is Iceman actually going to be the title of this new album? Is it only just going to be the title of a song off of the new album? But let me ask you before we move on to what Drake's actually said about this album, do you buy this theory?
Oh, I
do.
do.
Feel like it's legit?
I do, because in the short form piece, I mentioned that going back to the For All the Dogs era and even CLB, you knew what the title of that studio album was going to be before you even got an official rollout for it. He usually does this with his albums where he does a lot of teasing beforehand. He gives you these cryptic messages within his rollouts, whether it's social media posts or whether it's the attire that he's wearing or whether it's other platforms that he gives inside scoops to. Like, there's always this trail of different little hints that then lead up to that grand moment. And the fact that it's on his official product, right? It's not only on his attire, but it was on 100 gigs, and it was labeled as kind of like this new era 2.0. That's crazy to me. Not only that, but if you're doing so much cryptic messaging on your official Instagram account, which is Plot Twist, I think that definitely holds weight. And I think that it's also a really cool moniker for him. This is not corny. Like, this really does play into what Drake is. He's known for wearing extravagant jewelry. He's known to always be iced out. He's known to be also this cold-blooded guy that he doesn't care. He's going to drop hits every single year, right? So I think it plays perfect into the Drake moniker, and it's probably some of the best branding, if this is really what he's going for, that we've seen for a Drake album since Views, in my opinion. I'm going to be honest.
It could be, and in terms of just like the visuals for this album, if he's going into this Iceman aesthetic, I feel like there's limitless amounts of options for how he could present the album and the experience surrounding it in just a really cool way. And yeah, I think it's definitely not cheesy as a way to brand it, and it's taken on so many different meanings for so many different people. Like, there's even a a famous hitman that was called the Iceman. Like there's so many different iterations
Is
of
someone
this
that's
name.
cold-blooded,
Yeah.
someone that doesn't miss, someone that under pressure has ice in his veins and that's
Yeah.
able to deliver. And I
And
think
also coming from the north,
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
the Iceman.
So there we go. So I
Right?
mean, that's just to play a bit of like our conspiracy theorist vibe in that hat. But let's get into some factual stuff that Drake's spoken about on this new era and this new studio album. And by the way, he's never himself confirmed that Iceman will be the title for this. He's only played into it, and it's only been cryptic on his end.
Yeah, so we'll see.
On April 14, 2025, while he was doing his live stream with Aiden Ross, Drake said this about his new album. Thank you to everybody that's streaming the album, talking about some sexy songs for you. Every time, every journey. Working on a new album, it's a slap. And then he confirmed to Aiden Ross that it would be a solo studio album. Then in February of 2025, while Drake was touring in Australia, he was talking to the crowd and he had this to say. Eventually, when the time is right, Drizzy Drake alone, by himself, is going to have a one-on-one talk with y'all when the time is right. I'll be back with another album on a one-on-one conversation with y'all that you need to hear. That's interesting now.
It is
Now you're
interesting.
getting interesting. So, what did you make out of this? Because we never really spoke about this on the podcast yet. We were waiting for further developments with either a theory that was coming out. It sounds like he's taking a lot more of like a solo approach with this, where maybe it's going to be one of his most personal albums yet. I think that would be the right approach with this.
Yeah.
No?
I mean, I think that it's a case where a lot of people are looking for Drake to give them answers and to give his version of events of what's happened over the last year, and I don't really have the most interest in that, but we'll get into that a bit later. I want to focus on these updates. At another Australia show, he said, I'm going to work on another album, just me, and then I'll come right back to you.
That's
So
interesting.
he's really pushing the narrative that like this is where all his focus and energy is going into, is delivering on this solo album. He seems really dialed in with it. And speaking into that, Academics had tweeted in 2024, or in 2025 actually, on Drake's behalf, saying, wait for the next chapter. This was the warm-up. Next chapter loading. Some Sexy Songs for You is the first of two very important chapters in my life. My talk soon come. And this was February of 2025. My bad for the confusion. But he says, my talk soon come. And keep in mind, according to Academics, these are Drake's words, speaking on his own behalf. My talk soon come ended up being speculation for maybe that's going to be the title of the album, My Talk. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I think it's just Drake saying that I'm going to be honest and real with everyone that I'm speaking to, my fan base, on this new body of work. Something else in terms of an update, this could have been Drake playing around, or maybe it was serious. This was about Drake teasing that his next solo album might have 0 features, and that would mark the first time in his career that he ever has a studio album with 0 features. And this came from an IG post with Duke Dennis, dated March 24, 2025, that reads, and when I drop the next heater, New Money might be my only feature. So before we get into just thoughts about the album and all that, how would you feel about that point alone, about a new solo Drake album that has no features?
W play.
I would love it.
W play would force him to probably even be more coherent with the track list, right? Because you wouldn't have this overbloated feature list that comes in. And realistically, bro, every single artist that has ever made a wave low-key has featured on a Drake album at this point. Like, who else do I want to see? There's no one, really. I'm cool on everything at this point, right? I've gotten 21. I've gotten Future. I've gotten Young Thug. I've gotten even Kendrick Lamar on Take Care. I've gotten J. Cole. I mean, the list goes on and on and on at this point. So for me, like, it's fine. Now it's really time to get into this serious rap conversation. Also, I had this theory when we were talking with some friends of ours where I'm like, he dropped Some Sexy Songs for You. That was obviously very love and R&B centric. That was really one of the first times in his entire career where you got like an album that was really focused and coherent around that sort of vibe. Obviously, you got songs like Brian Steele, for example, that kind of swayed away, but it almost felt like an Honestly Nevermind type of track list where it was like, this is the intention, it's Valentine's Day, I'm making this for the lovers, this is what I want to do. I think he's probably thinking to himself, like, if I really want to go into a coherent vibe, I still have to deliver for that side of the fan base, so I will this year. And I'll even do it with P&D, and it's still going to play into that Toronto hometown vibe. It's going to feed the fans. People are going to be happy. They're going to have fun with that track list.
You really think this is going to be a straight rap album? Is that what you're getting to?
I think you might see the year where it happens. And I think he has no choice but to deliver it, bro. You think so? At this
I,
point,
I, I I
if you're
think
talking about wanting to speak one on one with your fan base, if you want to talk about really being honest with the fans and what they what you bring to the table, talk about the battle with Kendrick. Obviously, he wants to have a one on one conversation with everyone about what happened. Why would you do that in the format of a CLB or For All the Dogs?
I'm just a believer in history repeating itself. When I look at Drake's most recent studio albums, dating back from Views to Scorpion to then Certified Lover Boy to For All the Dogs, the formula stayed the same, bro. He has never dropped a straight rap album, a straight R&B album. Sure, he had his dance album with Honestly Nevermind that was more focused, even though you had your outliers like Jimmy Cooks. But all that to say, I would love to get what you're saying, to get a straight rap album where he's really focused in on the art of emceeing. I would love to see that happen. I just don't think that it's likely. But in terms of no features, I do love that idea because I feel like if he makes this album an in-house album where you're working with like no other artists, you're working just with your in-house producers like a 40, like a Boy Wonder, like an OZ, like a Vinyls. Think about the level of focus that would come out of that, bro. If he's really dialed in on that level,
album.
not working with any outside producers or rappers or singers or whoever else, I think that would unlock new levels of focus and concentration and make him deliver something that's...
But think about it, like, why would you want to deliver 22 love-centric songs and then after that go back into that bag for another studio album? It low-key doesn't even make sense. You fed the fans with what they want this year. He low-key did that play with Her Loss and Honestly Nevermind, and it worked in his favor. Where I was like, okay, 2 albums, I'm going to give you something that's maybe a bit more loose, that's fun for the parties. That was the Honestly Nevermind vibe. But then you go into Her Loss, and yeah, there was certain songs like Hours in Silence that felt a bit more love-centric, but you got heavy rapping performances from him throughout the entire album. So I think that's the play this year. I really do think that is the play. And it permits him not to overbloat this album, right? Because when there's this huge tension, obviously they have to put up the streams, they have to put up the sales, they know what they have to do. You've done that already with, some sexy songs for you. Now you could double down on that and now deliver for your rap fans. He could really win back a lot of people with this album.
I just feel like Drake has reached that point in his career where he said this himself, like he has so many different pockets within his fan base that he feels the need to have to please. And I think that's the reason why you're getting these 20-song albums that go into many different directions. It's because he wants to make everybody happy within that fan base. And I don't see that changing for a studio album. You might get another Scary Hours 4 EP. You might get a side project where Drake goes on this quest of just wanting to rap his ass off. I could see that happening, but I don't think we get it for a studio album. But let's talk about this Wireless Festival, because speaking of massive Drake events that might have a connection to this album, this Wireless Festival is a massive one. And when you're looking at this event, it's going down on the weekend of July 11th, 12th, and 13th, where he's going to be headlining all 3 nights of the Wireless Festival in London, which is the first time in history that it's being done. And I think Drake is taking this really seriously, bro, because when you look at the poster for this festival, it says that every single night will have a different set list, different special guests. There's going to be a lot of eyes on him here, and I think there's 2 possible scenarios that go down, one of them being more likely than the other. The first scenario is that he drops the album ahead of this Wireless Festival to have one of those dedicated set lists to him performing his new songs. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's too soon.
No.
Too soon. Option 2, what I think will happen, and is very likely, I think he's going to speak on that solo album and give somewhat of an update. It might not be a release date. It might not be announcing features. It might not be something massive, but I think he will say, I'm coming this summer or something.
Yeah, but he's another guy that likes to do that, right? Where he gives you, like, let's say a teaser or a date, and then after that, it just gets pushed back or it just doesn't happen. Thinking about For All the Dogs, that album was initially supposed to drop in August of 2023, and then after that comes in, what was it, October, right? He
And
dropped
look
it in
at
October.
the CLB delay as well.
The CLB delays happened for sure.
Her loss delay.
Her loss delay. Yeah, for sure. Like, it always happens. So as long as there's mention of new music, I'm happy. And I think that now it's a favorable time for Drake to drop music, right? People are kind of past the battle at this point. They're like, okay, it was cool. It was awesome. It was great for hip-hop, but let's hear from Drake. And let's see what he's able to do on a solo studio album front. And for me, like, that's just important. And I want to see him deliver a good album that's coherent, because we haven't gotten one of those in a long time. But What do you want and what don't you want on this album? Let
Yeah,
me ask you that.
let's get into this conversation. Listen, man, when it comes to this new solo Drake album, I think that what I want to see and what a lot of fans want to see at this point is Drake getting back to being vulnerable and giving us that self-expression, which is what made us fall in love with his music to begin with. If you really think about like his earlier projects, that's what was present, was just the honesty and him just being super upfront about like what he's going through at that point in his life, getting just these different snapshots of his life. And I feel like as of late, to be honest with you, a lot of his albums have been devoid of any substance, to the point where like Drake addressed that himself, bro. Going to like the lyrics on Churchill Downs, where he said something along the lines of like, I'm getting so rich to a point where my music's not even relatable anymore. Like, fans do want a relatable message within the music. I'm not saying that they're going to relate to you being able to go on your private jet and fly to Turks and Caicos and all that shit. But what I'm saying is that on a personal human level, I'd like to see just growth and maturity. And when I say I want to see him go back to that vulnerability, I'm not saying I want another song like Marvin's Room. I don't want him to make copies of songs he's made. I just want him to get real and honest with the fans again. But that's the biggest thing that I want from the album. What about you?
I agree with you. I don't want him to just release this album for the sake of releasing it. That's the feeling that I got from a lot of different studio albums in this decade, where I think there was quality on these records, but he just put them out for the sake of putting them out and keeping people entertained. Sometimes I feel like he plays too much into the fan base, and it's like he's giving too much of what people want. As an artist, my opinion, again, just as a fan, someone that's watching from an outside perspective, I think that artists always create their best material when they don't give you what you want, but you give them what they need, right? And at the end of the day, like, music's about that, where it's like you surprise people, you give them a different vibe that's never been released before. You're giving them new context and new life stories that haven't appeared on different studio albums. For example, like going to a lot of the content matter on COB versus For All the Dogs, there were certain pockets of that album that felt personal and relatable. For example, like a Champagne Poetry. But again, like the Turks and Caicos talk, being in these different casino rooms, being on the boat and doing this and that. Like, I'm not saying that I don't want that for this album, but I have albums worth of that full of material. And at that point, it just becomes filler, right? Where you're just filling up the lines to be able to entertain people and keep that going. So that's what I don't want. Don't entertain people just for the sake of entertainment. This is art, it's creative expression. Let's get back to that. That's what I want. I want this to be a meaningful album for Drake's career and to give you kind of context on what's going on with him. Like, it feels like a long time since I've gotten that, right? So that's for me.
I
And
think to focus on that, on some of the possible low points that could come within this album, the more I think about him saying that it's going to be a one-on-one conversation, back to what you were asking before, that kind of scares me, bro, because that might make me feel like he's going to address the beef at least on one song. And in an ideal world, address it on the intro and then get back to making hits and making slappers that have nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? What I'm scared of is that he's going to treat this album like another
Scorpion situation
where it affects the entire track list. And I feel like, bro, if Fighting Irish Freestyle was a tease of what's to come, I don't want it, bro. Drake sounded defeated on that song. Lyrically, he was kind of playing the victim, rapping about how, the world fell in love with the gimmicks and my brothers bought tickets, and like saying how he's lost loyalty. And I understand all of that, but we want a confident Drake back, bro. We don't want him harping back on events from a year past. We don't need excuses of why things were swayed a certain way. Like, none of that is going to be of interest.
No more Hard Part 6 situation.
We don't want that anymore,
No, but
bro.
that's
And
in the past, and I
I'm
think
scared
he
that
knows-
you get it. So let me ask you that. When you hear him saying, I want to have a one-on-one talk, a real, like, heart-to-heart, like, do you view this as him saying, like, I'm going to explain what happened in my own perspective? Like, what do you make out of it? Because I'm kind of worried about that.
It could go so many different ways, right? He could just tell you where he's at in his life right now. Like, he's definitely felt a lot of emotion off of what happened in 2024. So I think it is fair game, and I would love to see him just explain what he's been going through, but not from the lens of like the Hard Part 6 where you're trying to explain yourself and you're going back into theories and angles. Like, we've heard it all before. Like, we've been down that route material-wise, and now it's time to go into a different direction. Like you said, one of the most talented artists in the world, someone that's made incredible records, and I think that he just has to get back to doing it. And another thing that I want is like we've gotten a lot of the relationship talk and a lot of the lovey-dovey stuff on some sexy songs for you. I think that will still be prominent, unfortunately. But let's just tone it down, you know? Like, there could be a couple of songs, but I don't want to go through this entire track list expecting, like, this is your 444, bro. Like, you're telling your fan base that this is going to be an honest conversation. And then I'm listening to these records and you're talking about buying your new girl a Benz, you know? Like, I'm like, okay, I'm cool on that. You know, I really am. Like, you can't. That's my biggest fear with this project, right? It's like he knows what the fans want. He knows that they want an honest conversation. They want a vulnerable Drizzy album. You're playing into that. You're going to sell it. You're going to give them something that they need. And then after that, your fan base is going to go into it and they're going to get something completely different. That's what I don't want. That's what I'm scared of. So I think there is going to be references to the beef for sure. Absolutely. Like, it's fair game. He could do whatever he wants. It just has to be careful. Because you go into so many different directions, then the writing could just feel all over the place. Like, I want this to be focused and coherent. I've always said that for a new Drake album.
Totally agree. And I think that when you're a big fan of an artist, like one of the joys of being a fan is being able to watch them grow over the years. And with Drake, I think that's where we want to see him grow. We've seen him grow sonically, you know, experimenting with different genres. But I think we're now at a point where we want to see maturity in the pen and growth within his songwriting. And that's really what I hope to get, is just an evolution from Drake on a personal level. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. It's going to be super interesting. But I want to ask you this now. What do you think is on the line for Drake with this new album? Because there is sort of this sentiment that there's a lot of pressure on him, that he needs to fulfill a comeback, even though commercially he hasn't dipped at all. But is there anything on the line? And if so, what do you think's on the line here?
I think anything's on the line.
Nothing.
It's his art, bro. He can put out whatever he wants. He's a legacy artist at this point, too. Like, it's Drizzy Drake. Like, what's going to happen? He's going to fall off? No.
Yeah.
No. I think, like, those are just, like, narratives that are spun in the community because people like to play the Kendrick versus Drake comparison, right? And I think that'll forever be a thing at this point, if it wasn't even before 2024. But at the same time, like, what does he really have to lose? Nothing. He could put out another mediocre album, and we're still going to be talking about the next one that's to come. It's at a point for Drake where, like, it's so solidified that you'll never truly, like, lose trust in him, and you'll always be hoping for that one quality record that comes out. So for me, like, yeah, maybe as a fan it affects me, and I'm like, fuck, bro, like, another mediocre Drake album. But I've been in that vibe for maybe another, like, for the last 2 years, where it's like, yeah, this is not his best material. Songs in here I'm not revisiting, but I fuck with some shit. So at the same time, it's like, what really happens to my sentiment? It stays the same. That's the way that I kind of feel about it at this point. So that's where I'm at. How about yourself? Do you think there's anything to lose?
I mean, I don't think there's anything to lose, but I do think that, like, his public perception's on the line again, in the sense that, like, people are going to look at this album as sort of a litmus test and be like, okay, how phased were you by this whole situation? Like, how much is that situation going to play a role? Because there will be a lot of people coming into this album just to see how he's going to behave as an artist, what he's gonna say, how he's gonna act, how he's gonna rap, all that shit. Like, people are gonna go in to see, okay, are you really bothered by this still all this time later? And I feel like this is something that's out of our control, but a lot of people, let's say this is a bad album, they're gonna give credit to Kendrick for it. They're gonna say, oh, he washed him, he ruined him. Like,
The GNX comparison.
yeah, there's gonna be a lot of those comparisons. But more than that, what I think is on the line, I guess, is just like his reputation as the biggest hit maker in the world. I feel like he does have pressure to get songs going number one. And
Which he will, though.
Which I think he will.
Well, yeah.
My prediction is that he'll probably have 2 songs that hit number one. But just to say, I think that's something where, like, people might be like, okay, maybe he's on the same level of hit maker if that doesn't happen.
But you see, like, I'm not fazed by that.
I'm not phased by that, but I'm saying that people will run with that narrative, and it's not about me and you. It's about, like, how the world's gonna see it. I feel like it will be perceived a certain way if he doesn't have those mega slaps.
Okay, little game before we leave, right? So we always do the predictions game before we end off these episodes. Iceman, new studio album, first time we're ever doing this on record. Predictions for the 200?
I'm gonna. You're saying first week album sales?
Yeah, sorry, for the Hot 100. Yeah, excuse me. No, it's the 200.
The Billboard 200 chart.
Yes,
first week sales. First week sales for Drake. I think he's gonna stay around that range that he's been at with For All the Dogs. So that 350 to 450. But because of all that's happened, I'm going to say that it's going to go to the 450. I think it's going to sell a bit more than For All the Dogs.
I think it's going to be one of his
you.
best-selling albums this decade.
What's your prediction, though? I want a number.
I think 400.
You think 400?
I think
so
I'm
a
gonna
bit less than For All the Dogs,
a
maybe?
bit less from For
I'm
All
going
the
to say a
Dogs,
bit
but
more.
it's definitely doing more than Her Loss. It's going
Yeah.
to definitely... Well, Her Loss did how much? Around that
400, 4 or something?
Yeah, around there. I think probably it's going to be the higher selling albums of the decade for him.
100%.
It's going to sell more than Dark Lane demo tapes. It's going to sell more than Honestly Nevermind. And it's going to sell more than SSS.
Okay.
And I think it's going to go into that echelon.
Release date prediction, though, for Iceman.
2026.
26.
2026.
Wow. When?
2026.
Winter, fucking summer?
I don't know. I think my gut is...
It goes a whole nother year. I don't think so.
I think it goes a whole other
The
year.
way that he's been teasing this, the way that he's been talking about it,
Yeah,
I'm
but
going
he
to
did the
say...
same- but he did the
I'm
same
gonna
thing with
say-
Views from the Six.
I'm saying late summer. I'm saying late summer
No,
2025.
That's wishful thinking. First of all, there's songs off of Some Sexy Songs for You that are doing super well streaming wise, that are going crazy on the charts. The fans seem to be loving it. Public perception's back in Drake's favor again. That's fine. So I think that there's realistically no reason. Another thing, if you have all that material that's already doing so well, what's the use? You know, like that's at least my opinion. Maybe he treats this like a 2015 or 2022 situation where he double drops. If I'm him, I'm releasing a solo studio album. I treat it like For All the Dogs. I treat it like CLB. I treat it like Take Care. That is the project. That's the only thing I'm releasing. With If Readings It's Too Late, it was a mixtape. It was labeled as that. Still sold 500,000 copies first week. Then you go into Her Loss, labeled as a collaboration album. Honestly Nevermind was loosely thrown at us. Literally got the announcement the day of. I think with this, he's going to do like with Views from the Six. That was the original title for Views. He started teasing that in 2014. And he carried it all the way into 2026. Same thing with Certified Lover Boy.
Mm-hmm.
We got word of that album in 2020, carried it into 2021. Similar situation.
He's not going to wait. I'm calling it now. We'll see. He's not waiting until
No, but
2026.
bro, I think-
I would like for him to take his time, because that's another issue with recent Drake albums, that it feels like he hasn't had enough time in between projects to really gain new inspiration and really make sure the quality control is there. So I would love for it to be 2026. I don't think he does that. I think that he wants to put out this album and get the charts, go back home, go back to number one, continue to live on the charts. He's not going to wait, bro.
I think he's going to wait for it because it's going to build up hype. And then when it does happen in 2026, then we're going to see a full circle moment. So, guys, let me know in the comment section. Do you think Iceman's actually going to be the title of this album? Do you think it's dropping in 2025? And what do you want from Drake as a fan now in this new era? Thank you so much for watching this episode, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.